Another large protest was held outside of Congressman Pete Stauber's Hermantown office today.
It's the fourth in just the past month. Protesters are calling on the Republican to address what's happening in Washington in regards to DOGE's sweeping cuts to federal agencies. They argue Elon Musk, who is not an elected leader, has made many drastic changes with impacts to the Northland. The protesters say they've reached out to their lawmaker but have received silence in return. The congressman has been traveling in the Northland the past few days. You see in these photos making stops in Bemidji and Grand Rapids.
Ever since January 20th, when President Trump was elected, and then when he installed DOGE, I think that there's been a lot of attacks, especially on the federal workforce, and people are upset and they're afraid, they're angry.
Republican lawmakers are being urged by party leaders to avoid holding in-person events like town halls to avoid what they say are, quote, angry crowds.
Well, it has been one